Hello and welcome to Game Changer Live, brought to you by connorscoaching.com. We created this show and our growing community to share topics about positivity, coaching, personal development, mindset, and more. And we go live because we believe it brings the most authentic and unedited version of ourselves, so that what you see is what you get if you choose to hire us as your coach. We start every Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. live Pacific Standard Time with occasional guests, and we're on YouTube, so you can see all of our past content on our channel under the live screen. Together, we inspire. My name is Daniel Connor. I'm the owner of Connor's Coaching, and I'm a certified professional coach. I'm also a proud member of the International Coaching Federation, which means that I hold myself to a very high standard of ethics in coaching. When my clients hire me, they're usually feeling stuck and out of sorts. And they're hiring me because they're ready to discover a more fulfilling and satisfying and more prosperous life, a more purposeful life. My goal for them is simple: that they get a chance to wake up each day to a slightly better version of themselves reflected in the mirror. And today, we are going to talk about something that I haven't talked about for a real long time, but it has been a passion of mine for over 10 years: time management and stress. Busy, busy, busy. All work, no play. The early bird gets the worm. Rise and shine. Sleepyhead. A stitch in time saves nine. And for my World of Warcraft fans, work, work, zug, zug. Our lives are so full. We have bounties of information at the palm of our hands in our smartphones. We have endless things to do, from cinemas to events and theaters and streaming platforms to visit. We have business that moves faster than it ever has thanks to technology. We have same-day delivery services and the ability to get our groceries delivered if you live in a major city. Is it any wonder that our culture has so much burnout, stress, and anxiety? This isn't new. In her TED Talk, Carrie Thomas gave a TED Talk, and this isn't a main stage TED Talk. It's a TEDx, and it's called From Clutter to Clarity. If you are curious, I recommend watching it. It's actually very well done. Carrie Thomas is the speaker. She points out that postponed decision and clutter in general weigh us down and hold us back, and prevent us from living the vibrant life that we were meant to live. She asks, what could you do if you weren't weighed down by all of that stuff? Now, traditional time management approaches suggest that you just aren't using your time wisely. With a few changes to how you prioritize, you could just eliminate wasted time and be even more productive and busy. Those systems will fill your calendar with activities like answering emails, making sure that your meetings are prepared for, that you've batched all of your like tasks together for efficiency, and that you spend grueling amounts of time preparing your schedule each and every day. But these are just stopgap measures that slow the stress. They don't prevent it in the first place. They also do not have room for mental health or wellness. They don't have time for personal lives or family. They don't eliminate anything. They just organize it a little for efficiency. You still have the same amount of work, the same amount of information, the same tasks, the same duties, the same interests, your family. Nothing's changed. So we need to shift our focus. We need to learn to measure what we can actually accomplish reasonably and commit just to that. So today, I'm going to challenge you to pronounce the word no out loud when it means the difference between your health and your need for external gratification. Today, we're talking about excess stress and saying no. This is a problem that is ubiquitous. It is absolutely everywhere. It's in school, it's in work, it's in parenting, it's in relationships, it's in dating. It doesn't matter who you are, at some point, you're going to feel a form of overwhelm. Something that is too much is going to happen to you. A friend of mine once shared his version of this, and he calls it spoon theory. I don't know if that's intellectual property out there. If it is, please leave me a message in my comment section with the name of the person who came up with it so that I can credit them in the future. But in spoon theory, to summarize it, is you have limited resources, and we're going to call those limited resources your spoons. Okay? And basically, you have a drawer of this limited number of spoons. And when life hands you an issue, it's just like life handing you a big bowl of ice cream. You have to grab a spoon and you have to eat the ice cream. And then you put the dishes in the dishwasher. You can't get that spoon back. It's dirty. It doesn't go back in the clean spoon drawer. And then when life hands you another bowl of ice cream, you have to grab a new spoon. And after a while, you can actually run out of spoons because you have a finite resource of them. You are not infinite in your ability to handle the life that you're living. And I think that that's a really good way of picturing it because it shows you that you have a limited resource. It shows you that you don't have enough to deal with life and everything times infinity. You only have enough to deal with so much. And probably if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's because you've hit the limit that you have. You've reached the end of your spoons and you need to recharge. You need to let that sleep cycle or the dishwasher run so that you can unload it and fill your spoon drawer back up. So, Stephen Covey is probably the most famous person to write about time management. He wrote the book Seven Habits of Highly Successful People, among others. It's his most famous work. I think he's got several others that are just devoted to time management. And his method is just a stopgap. Like I said before, traditional time management is just a stopgap. In it, Stephen Covey really, and I taught this for years, I taught Stephen Covey's methodology for years. Um, in it, he talks about two different kind of things that categories that things can fall into. The first category is what is urgent. That is, what is happening in his definition, what is happening right this second that isn't happening at some vague time. So, in other words, the phone is ringing, someone's knocking at the door, or the fire alarm is ringing. Something that is immediate. Okay, so the urgent is the first category of things that things can fall into for Stephen Covey. The second one is important, and important is what is important for your survival and thriving as a human being. In this section, Stephen would include meeting the expectations of your boss, knowing what's required for your clients to be happy and satisfied, and surviving that fire that's in the building. Yes, that's also important to you, I'm pretty sure. And Covey wants us to prioritize things to keep them from becoming urgent because things that are important tend to become urgent in his model. If you let the phone go and you don't answer the phone long enough, you don't take care of those things, it probably is going to escalate. It's probably going to get worse. Now, in his model, he does say take care of both together. So if they overlap, these are two separate things, but they're like a Venn diagram, so they can overlap. If they overlap, take care of that thing first. Take care of the fire alarm that's ringing and the building's on fire, because that's both urgent and important. If your boss is calling, that's urgent and important. When Stephen Covey wrote this book, they didn't have caller ID, and they didn't. They had voicemail, but I don't know. We have a lot of technology now that makes a lot of his writing completely obsolete. But and so Stephen Covey's model does work well, sorry, if you have like a report that you know that your boss is going to want in the future. That means it's not urgent, but it is important, right? Because he's going to want it. It's an expectation, but it's not immediate. So if you work on it now, it will never become urgent because you'll have it done before it does. So Stephen Covey's model is all about reducing the stress that you're going to experience, but it's not about reducing the amount of stuff that you have. The problem with his model is, how do you balance when two things are of equal priority and equal urgency? They're both important and they're both urgent. What if your boss is a serial killer and expects you to answer the phone on the second ring and the building's on fire? You're kind of screwed either way. I'd argue you probably picked the wrong boss, but so let's talk about human needs. Because Covey doesn't account for work speeding up over time, and he doesn't account for emails even. Electronic communication didn't exist. I think they had fax machines, but they didn't have emails. Same day turnarounds weren't the business standard back then. He thought answering your mail meant spending the last hour of your 8-hour day sitting and opening up physical envelopes and tossing out junk mail and answering correspondence. It is totally outdated, and we're still using it as our model for time management. Covey also doesn't cover human needs, although I can argue, and I did argue, that it is important in his model to take care of yourself and that you are at your most efficient when you do. But he doesn't take care of emotions. He doesn't take care of mental wellness. It's the personal morals and ethics and standards that aren't weighed when it comes to the urgent, the important diagram. He's leaning into problems surrounding unhealthy expectations by suggesting that you just do it at a sacrifice of other things. It's a one-size-fits-all approach that really only fits the business wolves from the 1980s. They're not even real. They were an ideal. They're not human beings. They're an ideal that we created for what an ideal business wolf looks like. And they are highly successful and highly unhealthy individuals that are not actual living, breathing human beings with kids and lives and problems. They're also highly wealthy, usually have secretaries that they can off-put a lot of work onto. So there really is no reason that everyone should be expected to use his model. Human beings have emotions, physical and mental needs, and oftentimes these go neglected, even though we are at our best and most productive when they're nourished. So it is time for a human priority system. And that is what we're going to create. It's time for us to recognize, prioritize, strategize, and actualize. This is my model for a human priority system. And this is pretty complicated. When we're talking about time management, we're not talking simple. What I'm offering here is a one-time solution that you're going to do maybe once a week, maybe once a month, however often you need to. It's going to be different for you based on your own needs. This should work for almost everyone, and it should take into account almost everything within you, okay? And it's going to be entirely off of your system of needs and wants and not off of someone else's. So we're going to start with recognizing. So this is the first of our 4 solutions. The first step is to recognize your limits. It's to recognize your desired outcomes. It's to recognize your priorities, but also, really important. Thank you, Rachel. A human priority system. Yes, absolutely. So we're recognizing our limits, our outcomes, and our priorities, but we're also recognizing our need for external validation. And that's where it's going to start. And this is the make or break step. I find that a lot of our stress, a lot of our, oh, I need to accomplish this, is stress that we put unduly on ourselves because we need to show up. We need to be seen. We need that emotional paycheck is what I got, what I was told by my father. We need the attaboy or good job. We need appreciation. We need to be seen as a hero. And these will always feel false if you need them. Because the reason you need them is you're not providing them to yourself. External gratification, the need for external gratification can exist in healthy levels, but if it's existing in a level that's causing you stress, undue stress, that may be a dysfunction. And I'm not a mental wellness professional. I'm not diagnosing anyone. But if you are finding yourself stressed to the point of dysfunction, you may wish to find a qualified professional, mental health, mental wellness professional that's going to help you eliminate your need for external gratification. If you find that the things in your schedule can't go away because someone else is going to get hurt, those are external. Not talking about kids here. Kids are different. Kids are part of your duties, but we're talking like a boss, that a boss is going to be upset with you or that your family is going to think less of you. Those things probably need to go to a therapist. So that's our first recognition. The second recognition is, what are your limitations? What are your limits in what you can accomplish? And with this, I want you to think about your time as a plate. You have 24 hours in a day. You're going to section off part of that plate for work activities. Part of that plate you're going to section off for downtime activities, and part of that plate you're going to section off for sleeping and wellness activities. Okay? And realizing that you have 8 hours or 9 hours for work, 2 hours for kid time, and 1 hour for downtime, and 8 hours for sleeping, plus a couple of hours for commuting and whatnot. That's important, right? You also need to think about how much break you need in there, how much white space you need between your time. If you're in meetings at work, back to back, how are you going to get to those meetings? Right? So maybe they need to be scheduled for 50 minutes instead of 60 minutes so that you have that extra 10 minutes to get to your next meeting and not be late. So start thinking about how much can fit on that plate. What sections are devoted to work and what sections are devoted to rest and what sections are devoted to play. Next, we're going to recognize a third thing. That is, who are you? What do you want? What is going to make you proud of yourself in 20 years? When you look back 20 years from now, at this moment now, what would make you smile and say that you made the right choice? What are your priorities? Who do you love? Who do you spend time with? How much time do you spend with them? How much is enough? We're going to start now with this recognizing process with two lists. We're going to create two lists. The first list is your non-negotiables. These are things that are black and white. I will absolutely feel like I failed my life if I don't spend time with my kids, for example. The second list is your nice to haves. These would be things like, I would feel proud of myself if I spent an hour a day writing a book. These are going to be definitions of who you are and what you can do. Next, we're going to look at everything that you could be doing. This is the part that you're going to repeat the most often, because the other recognitions, those are like kind of a one-time thing or once a year thing. They do change over time, but they're probably going to stay pretty consistent. If you're finding that you're getting stressed out, just go back through those three things. But if you're not getting stressed out, if this is working for you, just start from this point forward, okay? So at this point, we're recognizing, I call this the buffet. What's on our buffet? What could go on our plate? Okay. And this is where we're going to track and list, and you can just make this a pencil list. This is a kind of a third list of everything that fits within those categories of work, play, and rest. Okay. So, and be very, very, practical here and write everything down. Write all of the meetings, write all of the things that you have. And really looking at this from a 1 week perspective is probably the easiest, or 1 day perspective if you're obnoxiously busy. And this is the step that you're going to repeat easily, because you can really skip the limits and the personal desires portion and really just focus on the buffet section, because your limits really don't change over time and your who doesn't really change over time. And those lists that you created, the non-negotiables and the nice to haves, you're going to keep those with you. Okay, those are living lists. You're going to add to them. You're going to scratch things off that don't work for you. You're going to redefine things. You're going to change those over time. Okay, but you don't really have to go back and redo all of that work. Okay, so second, and this one, this is where we're going to start narrowing things down. And we're going to start adding Covey back in, Stephen Covey. So we are going to pull from Stephen Covey the urgent and the important, but we're going to throw away his definition. We're going to say, instead of urgent being the things that are happening right now, urgent is our non-negotiables and the things that we need to do to keep us healthy. So this would be all of the things on your non-negotiable list, plus the amount of sleep that you need, plus the amount of self-care that you need to stay your best and to stay healthy. Those are the things that are going to be your absolute top must-do priorities. And then we're going to do our important. And now we have a clear 1-2 priority system. We have a clear way of saying, this comes first and this comes second. Okay, so we have our urgent, and now we have our important. The important are the nice to haves. These would be things that are fun, and we're going to start crossing off things from our buffet that no longer fit in those lists. And if that feels painful, if that doesn't spark joy like Marie Kondo says, then that may be a need to go back and look at the reflection of the recognition stage of what is it that is causing that kind of conflict. Okay. So, we're going to go on to the third stage here. The third stage is to strategize. In strategizing, we're going to start deciding where we're going to say no. That no is going to be all of those things that you crossed off. And some of them, you just need to say no to yourself. And you've already done that by crossing it off. So congratulations, you've done that step. The others, you may need to be a little strategic. That's why this is the Strategize section. You're going to figure out how and when you're going to say no to these things. So that brings me to why this is a topic of this episode today, because last week I felt incredibly busy. I just picked up a new volunteer position. I said I'm an ICF member coach. I'm International Coaching Federation member. I just volunteered for a leadership position with the local chapter of my ICF chapter of ICF Oregon. I'm the director of enrollment, and my position started onboarding last week. At the same time as that, I had a guest scheduled today that wanted me to take her master class in podcasts so that I would be prepared to ask her questions related to that so that we could share with you all of her information. I couldn't add one more thing to my plate last week. I had to make a decision to say no to that episode. And it felt awful. But I had to prioritize. And this was a new position that I just started. And the person that I'm replacing has a finite amount of time to train me. She's going to go away. So I made a decision. And I strategized on how to say no. And then I started to notice when other people were talking about how difficult it was to say no. And I heard at another meeting that people said that they felt overwhelmed by the amount of meetings that they had to go to and how difficult it was to say no and how they felt like they needed to be seen and they needed to be present. And it took them 6 months to get over it. Saying no can feel like a letdown if you need external gratification. Everyone feels the need for a little external validation every once in a while. But it is healthy if you can give it to yourself and say, no, thank you, to the external. And I want that for everyone. So we're going to start making a list here. And we're going to call this our not to do list. So now we have 4 lists. Okay. The first list that we have is our non-negotiables or our urgent. The second list is our important or our nice to haves. The third list we've started crossing off, and that was our buffet. And now we have our do not do list. And these are the things we're crossing off of our buffet. We're moving them off. We're eliminating. Now, there are 4 rules for this process. And these 4 rules are important, so I do want to cover these right now. The first rule is that you always have permission to change it, and you can change it at the drop of a hat. But I recommend, my personal recommendation is to have a magic phrase that you say to make it a conscious choice, like, I give myself permission to make this change. Okay, so that it is a conscious choice to make that change. The next rule is no multitasking. You are never going to be able to do more than one critical brain process at a time. That means if you're listening to someone on the phone and talking to them, you can't also read a document that has nothing to do with that conversation. That is not something that your brain is capable of doing. So rule number 2 is no multitasking. Rule number 3, include variety. You're a complex person and you need to have variety in your life. You know that saying, all work and no play. Make sure that you have a variety of different types of social activities. Going to the movies, hanging out with a friend, playing games, and if possible, My personal choice is to choose or prioritize activities that require engagement, activities that don't just have you sitting there drooling while something is pumped into your brain, where you get to engage in it, like playing a game instead of watching a TV show, like telling a story instead of reading a story. And then rule number 4, leave time for breaks. White space is important in art. It gives the eye time to relax. White space is also important in your schedule. It gives you time to go to the bathroom. So make sure that you leave time on your schedule for bathroom breaks, because now it's time to take that list that we've narrowed down and fit it onto your calendar if you need to. Okay? Sometimes that paper list is all you need, and that's perfectly fine. If you're like a student and you don't really need that calendar to keep you moving from class to class because you have a set schedule every day, that's not a problem. Don't worry about it. Just use the paper list. But if you are going from meeting to meeting and it changes day to day and you need that calendar, use a calendar, either an app or a physical calendar, whatever works best for you. There are some really great planners out there. I've heard of Panda Planner recently as being really good, that can really help you outline what your day is going to look like. So using those 4 rules: permission to change, no multitasking, variety, and breaks, make sure that you've scheduled in all of the things that you need to do. And that is the strategy section. You've strategized on how you're going to say no and what you're going to do. And finally, the 4th, and this is the easiest, but also the most difficult at the same time, is actualizing. Now you have your lists. Now you're going to live them. You're going to say no to all of the things that you crossed off and you put on your do not do list. You're going to follow your own plan for how you're going to say no. You're going to delegate the tasks you can delegate. You're going to defer the tasks that you can defer. And you're going to say no to the tasks that just don't fit into your life. And that can be difficult to do. And if you need support to do that, there are plenty of resources out there, including me. Now, remember rule number 1 for this step. It continues to apply. You always have permission to change anything in this process. You can change your urgent list, you can change your important list, and you can change your do not do list. You have that authority. Just repeat that magic phrase: I give myself permission to make this change. And finally, take some time during this process to reflect and to repeat it and to improve it each week. If you saw my last video, I believe very strongly in regular incremental improvements. So make small changes in your life. It's connected. Okay, it looks like maybe we're back. So sorry about that. Had a hiccup in my broadcasting. We're almost done. I just want to give you a summary about what I just said. So take time to reflect and repeat and to reanalyze what worked and what didn't work and make changes as you need. And then finally, just to summarize, what we're doing here is we're recognizing who and what you are, what you need in life. We're prioritizing to eliminate the things that no longer fit. We're strategizing so that we can say no confidently because things don't fit in our lives anymore. And we actualize to live that life. If you find yourself needing help setting your own human priority system in place, you can always check me out. I have a website. It's connerscoaching.com. It's CONNERS coaching.com. There's a link to the website in the description for this video, and you can always book a free 1-hour discovery session for first-time clients with me on our booking page and we'll discuss what coaching will look like. Okay. Um, Thank you so much for taking time to watch me today. This was a long video. It was very detailed. And since you stuck around this long, don't forget to take time out of your day to subscribe, leave a like, comment on the video about what you enjoyed most about our episode. And next week, tune in because we'll be bringing you more life coaching content at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Wednesday. And remember, together,